welcome to the next episode of paRANTing, and I'm absolutely thrilled today because I have the wonderful Leanne Ewart-Davies with me. Now, Leanne and I met through the world that is coaching on Facebook, and we've been connected for quite a while now, I think. So I'm thrilled that Leanne's with us today. Leanne is an emotional well-being and femininity. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I predominantly help people to live their best lives, to remove the emotional burdens that are sort of holding them back, release the blocks, that sort of emotional distress that can just cause them to not thrive in life. So that's one part of what I do, and that's with men and women. And then my femininity stuff is obviously predominantly with women. I don't really get many men coming to me wanting to do that program, surprisingly.
Give it time.
Yeah, you never know. But yeah, so and with that program, it's feminine embodiment program, and I get them reconnecting with their feminine energy, understanding more about the dynamics, of energy, the feminine and masculine energy, and then how to utilize that, in everyday life, in order to sort of live a more stress-free life, but also to understand themselves. It's like a self-discovery, awareness program, really. And I get great results from the women, and I love it. And they all come back to me and slide into my inbox, with their little revelations that they've had since and stuff. Or just for the occasional, can you hold my hand through this, please? Or help me.
That happens quite a lot, hey?
Yeah. So, but it's great. I love it. And they all feel just massively empowered afterwards, which is great. And I just love seeing that in people. I think I love more so when they have those light bulb moments on the video calls and stuff, and I'm just and I see it written all over their face, and they're just like, oh my God, I've just connected that dot. Yeah. It's fun.
It is really good fun. And I think the thing for me, the reason that I wanted to invite you on to here is because the work that you do and the person that you are so closely interlinked. This is all stuff that's born out of your own experience, right? Of being a mother and a wife and an ex-wife, and just managing all of those things together.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's sort of like what I've done the exact same process as what I take my clients on.
Definitely.
After I initiated separation with my husband and had to go through that process, but it was a case of I'd sort of lost myself, and being all these other roles, being a mum, being a wife, I had sort of lost, Leanne, who am I now? Who do I want to be? And I had to acknowledge that, I wanted to be a certain place, with my career and stuff like that, but there was also things holding me back, and I had to look into that, like the identity stuff. And so I walk my talk. I've been there, I've gone through it, and it's good, and I try and obviously get my clients to have the same sort of results. Obviously a lot of it, there is a lot of mum guilt there, for women, especially with the separation process, but also just in general, because we, society tells us we have to be this perfect parent, and we have all this pressure, and sometimes it's pressure that we put on ourselves. Do you know what I mean? Other times it's the fear of judgment and all that, but it's ultimately there, so I have to do a lot of reframing work with some of my clients, so that they know they need to put their oxygen mask on first in order to see to anybody else.
Yeah, definitely. And I love how you say that, because it's really important, isn't it? If you're not okay, we can't pour from an empty cup. And I love the analogy of you have to put your own oxygen mask on first. That's what they tell you to do on a plane. It's really
exactly
good.
And it is quite daunting, it's that sort of feeling selfish for doing it, but it's not, because when we're in a better place, everybody benefits from that when we're happy and healthy, and stuff. So it's massively important, and we take on a lot as a mum, I think.
Yeah, definitely. We spoke the other day in our kind of preamble chat before this about who you kind of were before you initiated your separation and who you were as a mum. So tell me about the difference in your parenting, I guess, your parenting style, or who you were as a person before that.
Yeah, so I mean, I never really went at, so when I became a parent, it was a case of my kid, my child came first. So I sort of just put myself on the back burner. I came out of work to bring, my child up. My husband carried on working, but I took that role on. And, I didn't really have much of a social life or anything like that, because I was just, full in mummy mode, So in that sense, I didn't really have a life for myself, and my whole identity became being a mum and a wife, and just having that role. There was there was very few times that I did go out, and when I did, it would be like, oh, it's at home babysitting the kids.
Yeah.
No,
Babysitting.
yeah. It's not babysitting, it's parenting.
Yeah.
I don't babysit my children, I parent them. That's what he's doing too.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because you get like working mum, you get stay-at-home mum, you never get babysitting mum.
No.
As your title. I'm a babysitter all the time.
Yeah, exactly. A full-time babysitter for my children that I gave birth to.
£5 an hour, great.
It's just, but it is ridiculous that, I remember getting that like every time. It was just like really quite frustrating. It's just like, it's not baby. Why is it seen differently? Like, if he went out, no one said to him, oh, is Leanne at home babysitting?
It just cracks me up.
It's one of them. It's a funny one, but yeah. So when I initiated separation, there was a lot of stuff going on there, because predominantly I'd stayed in that marriage longer than I probably wanted to, because I convinced myself I was doing it for the kids.
Yeah.
And there is some stuff there based on like my childhood. My parents split him. My husband's parents, they also split when he was at a young age. So it was like trying to keep that like unity, and that family unit together. So I was worried, about that. So I had to reframe some of that, because what I actually realized is, although we never showed them like any sort of like toxic, like abusive behavior towards each other, it wasn't like that. We weren't showing them what a healthy relationship was either,
Definitely.
And I remember it really like stood out to me this one occasion. He actually kissed me, because like we'd sort of lost intimacy by this point, and he kissed me in the kitchen, and my daughter's reaction to that was just sort of like, oh my God, like she was really shocked and surprised and taken back by it, like, because it's something she never saw.
Wow.
And it was that sort of like light bulb moment of, that's not right.
Yeah.
And I don't want her getting into a relationship with somebody where she feels like affection isn't a normal thing, and that sort of hit home. And I realized, that in actual fact, we weren't like showing them, unhealthy relation in terms of arguing or anything like that, but we were doing it in other ways.
That's a massively important point, actually, Leanne, I think, because, society makes this judgment that when you split up, there's a big reason there. There's there's domestic violence, or there's abuse, or there's, somebody's had an affair, or there's a big event. And often you just fall out of love with each other, or you grow apart. One of you develops more than the other, and the change is such that you no longer meet in the middle. So like you say, to be able to recognize that for your kids and actually show them that this might be okay, it might be sustainable, but it's not enjoyable. That's huge. That's a big decision to make.
And it was also impacting my ability to parent my kids too. So because of the built up sort of like frustration and resentment in certain areas of our relationship where I didn't feel supported and stuff like that, it would affect, how I was with the kids. It's that whole short straw sort of situation. Like what I realized is, if he wasn't in the equation, I wouldn't get annoyed actually for him not helping out with like a bit of housework or something, because I mean, especially when our son was young, he had colic, and I had another child to look after, so like I just never got anything done. It's like it was just a nightmare situation with the colic and the no sleep. And
you were really sick throughout your pregnancy, you said.
Yeah, so I had 9 months of being sick pretty much every single day. I think I probably had like a week in total, like putting days together where I wasn't sick.
Wow.
It was really like, it really did wear me down.
Mm.
And it was just like that whole, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Fine, it will be done when I give birth.
Ah,
It
the
will be.
advice.
And it then I had to go on about I think 3 or 4 lots of antibiotics because
Mm.
I caught sinus infections and all sorts during my pregnancy. And nothing was really shifting it. So I think it was like 3 or 4 courses of antibiotics. I was trying to breastfeed as well.
And
And
look after your
and
other
my colic,
child.
and he had colic, and my daughter was like 2.5,
Uh,
3, like at nursery, and I was trying to manage all this stuff, like, and just on no sleep,
and
like
the housework and keeping yourself fed and people coming around all the time and expecting you to be just on so that you can entertain them and your
yeah.
child. And
It was hard wearing,
yeah.
and especially when you feel like you're not really getting that support from your
Mm.
partner. It's really important to be in together in it,
Yeah.
and help relieve each other of certain burdens, when you see the other one struggling. But I think that was definitely something I realized I couldn't really do. Like I didn't have that trust because when I did go to him, the way he managed stress was differently to me. So he couldn't handle it, sort of
Yeah.
thing. And so that caused a lot of strain on our relationship. But it was just like one of those that I realized when he wasn't around,
Mm.
I wouldn't get as frustrated
Yeah.
about not being helped out, sort of thing. I would just sort
Yeah.
of get on and do it. Like, but when he was around, it was like, come on, please, can you just help me out? Like, so if
Yeah.
he didn't, it would cause that sort of like bitterness within me. And then that would make me have more of a short temper, and not be able to like be as patient and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But so I acknowledged all of that. And I'm really like happy. I mean,
Yeah.
our kids are doing really well still. There's, I communicated with the schools and the nursery, and so that they knew what was going on,
Yeah.
just to make me aware if anything came up within them. But we both sat them down. We had that chat with them. We showed them it was okay,
Mm.
and they were okay. I know my daughter, being a bit older, was a bit, more affected and upset about the situation, but because we were both there as a united front saying it's
Mm.
going to be okay. It is like there's going to be slight changes, but in actual fact it's exciting. You're going to have 2 homes now.
Yeah.
And
Double the
it's going to be
Christmas,
like this.
double Easter, double
Yeah,
birthday.
exactly.
You have to
And
sell the shit out of that one.
yeah, I mean, my son was just like, well, I'm just going to go play over here, because he was
Yeah.
obviously that bit younger where it just all went over his head.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was difficult, but it was more difficult, I think, on us than
Mm.
like, if anything, trying to keep it together. But I mean, that's the thing. We are still friends, and we have a good relationship.
Mm.
So, and I think that's really important, and they see that. So it's not like they're not involved in any sort of animosity.
Mm.
We don't. There's none of that. So, we're doing really well at showing them that it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
so, but yeah,
And
it's been a
it's
roller
rare,
coaster.
I think. Yeah, it's really rare because I mean I'm sort of thinking back to when I met my son's dad, my ex-husband, and when we got together, because there weren't, I mean, he has 3 older children, and perhaps we'll get to the extended families
Yeah.
in a bit. So but for us at the time, we didn't have kids, so life was freer. We made our decisions. We kind of could come and go as we pleased. And I think there's no extra stress on your own relationship. There might be
Yeah.
external stressors about previous relationships, but there's not really any immediate stress just on you two as a couple.
Yeah.
So like I was just thinking about when people have kids and they don't really know each other. Like we'd been together probably about 7 or 8 years before we
Yeah.
had my son,
Same.
so
Yeah.
right, so you know each other,
Yeah.
but the difference of having kids, even when you think you know that person, how the dynamic changes, how you change as a person,
Yeah.
the impact on that is massive.
It is. And it's something that I don't think a lot of people, like you say, actually give thought to,
Yeah.
And I suppose we're all a bit naive when we first go into, it's first time for everyone.
Yeah.
So you don't really know what to expect. It's a new experience. But I think it's so important to understand, the support system that needs to be in place.
Yeah.
Because the role has changed nowadays, and we take on everything. It used to be, what was the saying? Takes a village to raise a child, or something like that. There's a saying. And obviously nowadays, we take on all of that.
Totally.
And then we feel guilty when we're palming them off onto the grandparents or something to go out for a night or something.
Yeah.
Just like when it's baffling, isn't it? Like when you break it down and look at it, like, and think, really? But so many women do have that guilt, that mum guilt, by just having a night out for themselves or something,
Because
and
it's deemed as selfish, isn't it? It's not selfless to go and fill your cup. It's selfish because you're doing something for yourself.
Well, I was chatting to a mummy friend in the playground yesterday, and she was like, she went out at the weekend overnight with some friends.
Yeah.
And it was planned with her husband. Like, he knew, he took her to the train station and stuff, but he copped the arse when she got back, and he wasn't talking to her. So at this point, so it was yesterday, Tuesday. She went out on Saturday, and he's not talking to her because she actually did go out, even though he knew she was going to go out. He took her to the train station, But it was that, how dare you have a life? But it's okay for you to just go to the pub and then stay out all night without even saying anything.
Yeah, straight from work. Yeah, that kind of stuff. I'm just at the pub for 10 later. Yeah.
It's just that there seems to be that sort of different expectations, and views and stuff on what a woman can do and what a man can do in terms of, when they're a parent.
Yeah.
And it's quite sad, really. I'm like, no, break away from that.
Yeah, definitely. It's the double standard. It's not just the mum guilt of, so again, like we both, you and I, initiated our own separations, not from each other, I still love you, but from our own partners. Actually, this is probably the healthiest relationship I've had in a while. No jokes. But yeah, so the fact that it's mum, quote unquote, leaving the family, it's mum breaking up the family, to me is much bigger than if it's societal. I mean, like the way society perceives it,
100%.
than if dad does. When dad leaves the family home, it's the relationship broke down, it's done. Mum has to break this up, and it's like, you left him? Like, how could you ruined your family? Like, what, I can't be happy.
Why didn't you stay there and try and work it out? You could have worked it out. But a man doesn't get that. I definitely had some of that from certain people, not necessarily what they said. I've noticed it. It's a sad situation when you realize you're going to lose certain people, and it's something you do have to accept and come to terms with. It's not that they mean, it's people take sides because they feel like they have to take a side, which is sad, isn't it, really? But that is that whole needing to blame somebody. So I was like, do you know what? If I have to be the bad person in this storyline, fine. I'm good with that, because I know the situation, and I'm happy with you thinking I'm the evil queen in this story.
I'll own it. I'll take it. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, there was a lot of people that were surprised, and I think some people were probably a bit bitter that they didn't have the bravery to do it themselves.
100%. 100%.
One of my friends who doesn't have any kids, but has friends who have kids, lots of friends who have kids. And he was saying to me, he was one of my ex's good friends. And I saw him not that long ago, and he was like, do you know what? take my hat off to you. Fair play, you've done it really well. The fact you and Jono are still on good terms and all of the rest, blah, blah, blah. He was like, I actually think most of my friends are only together still because they've got kids. And in actual fact, if they didn't have kids, they wouldn't even be together anymore.
Totally. And it's funny you say that, because I was thinking about all of a sudden they're taking sides, but when you were coupled, you were invited places with other couples, and all of a sudden, because you're now this single person, these couples don't invite you to shit. You're all of a sudden almost a threat. you're almost showing other couples what they could have. They could have this freedom. Do you know what I mean?
I do, yeah.
Did you get that?
There was a couple of my really close girlfriends.
Yeah.
Their other halves were just so intimidated and being like, no, don't want Leanne around. Like, you know,
you're going to obviously want all of the men that were there beforehand. What?
Yeah.
No.
Well, with these guys, I mean, they were just sort of like, she's going to take our wives out. She's going to get them to separate from me. And I'm like, do you know what? If you felt that way, it's because you know you're not pulling your weight, or you're not standing up, and like there is problems there already, or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I almost preached all over that. Yes.
Yeah, you know, and then women, oh my God, I noticed the change when it got round the school playground. In just how women like communicated with me.
Yeah.
You know, all of a sudden there was less sort of like smiles and friendliness. It's almost like, keep her away from my husband.
Yeah.
She's looking at him.
Yeah. Yeah, like you're some kind of cougar who's going to go after like married men. And I think I said this on a post the other day, like, I didn't want the man I married, so I don't want somebody else's married man. Like, you keep hold of him, love. Like, I'm not interested. That's not my job. It's ridiculous.
I mean, I'm one of that, like, I don't get involved in the playground stuff. No. And I rock up wearing whatever the hell I want and stuff like that. And there are times in the summer where I've got my little denim hot pants on and I can see the looks and I'm like, do you know what? Lap it up.
Totally.
But it's one of those, like, I don't get, like, if your husband's looking at me, I'm not looking at him.
Yeah.
Like, and that's not my problem.
Yeah. And again, what, you know, why are you so insecure in your own relationships that that's an issue? Like, if you're both making each other happy, either it doesn't matter if they look elsewhere because they know, you know, they know that they're coming home to you, or, you know, they wouldn't look anyway. Like, it's about your relation. Everybody should be focusing on what they're doing and giving less of a shit about other people.
That's my motto. I just go and I'm just me.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, obviously there's a line. I'm not going to go like into the like school topless or anything.
Although if you went in the jumper you went in the other day, they might have preferred it.
I'm often just like, if it's a bit nippy out, like when it was like in between seasons or whatever, and it's still quite warm or whatever, I'd better put a bra on because my nips might not be appreciated.
Yeah, get the chicken fillets in. It's all good. Keep you warm.
But you know, it is funny, like the views around everything, and yeah, I definitely noticed a change in certain people.
Yeah.
Which, you know, it's fine, that's on them. I didn't take it personally, and I still don't. You know, I'm just like, whatever, I'm doing me. You continue to do whatever it is that you're doing.
Definitely. I mean, I don't know about you, but like my son has only seen me really with maybe like one long-term partner in the quite a long time that we've been split up. It's been a long time now. I think I've been single for about 10 years now. Like,
really?
Yeah. I mean, like, there's been, you know, like a few month things here and there.
We need to go out and I'll be your wing woman.
Yes, maybe that's what we need. But again, like, that's not a priority. And I think whenever somebody new comes into my life, whether it's a friend or not, my son gets all excited and he's like, oh Mum, maybe this could be the one. You're like, it's just a mate. Like, it's absolutely not the one. Like, don't. But at the same time, if it was, he would also be kind of put out because he's so used to it being just us two. You know,
I mean, me and Fidel were together for quite a while before I actually considered my kids even meeting him. You know, it's a really big decision for me. And I think because of my upbringing, I had quite a few like men come in and out from my mum. So like when my parents split, and it wasn't like every week a different guy.
Yeah.
Just to like, make that clear.
Some people do.
Yeah, some people do, and that's fine if that's what they want to do. Trying to like remain unjudgmental here. Totally.
You know, each to their own.
But it's based on my own stuff, guys, not you.
Totally.
So, But yeah, my mum did have a few partners that we were introduced to, and some were around longer than others, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember losing a couple, do you know, that I liked,
Yeah.
and it was a sad situation, you know, of like having somebody in your life for a while and then them just sort of going and then never being in your life again.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to do that to my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we were both very clear on the fact that when it came to introducing them to new partners, we would have the chat beforehand, me and my ex, make sure we're both okay with it, and you know, then obviously take that next step. And so, you know, I'd done all of that with my ex in terms of Fidel meeting the kids, and it was quite a while into us like sort of seeing each other and being off and on and then making it official and sort of like really going for it, until I actually allowed the kids to come into the equation sort of thing. But what I did notice, and it's funny, like my son is a bit like, no, my girlfriend, and I'm like, I'm not your girlfriend, Bubs. I'm your mummy. And he's, no, my girlfriend.
How old is he now?
He's 5. He's going to be 6 soon.
Brilliant.
I mean, the other day, my ex said something to him, asked him something, and he turned around and said, no, I don't need a girlfriend because I'm going to marry mummy.
Oh. Oh, I love that age.
I know. And I remember my daughter doing it to my husband, you know. So it's nice that they do feel like safe enough to be, you know, that they have that with us, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't. And so that comes out sometimes. There was one occasion me and Fidel took them to the cinema, and I was in the middle of Fidel and Connor, my youngest, and Connor was like sort of, I think he noticed my like Fidel's hand from my hand, so then he was sort of like taking my other hand, like, and then at one point we swapped the hands, and like I don't think he realized, or he'd taken Fidel's hand, not mine. And it took him a while to realize this, and Fidel starts like trying to pick his nose and stuff with it, and he's just like, what are you doing, mummy, sort of thing. And then he realized, and he was just like, oh, I've been deceived.
I remember Fidel was killing himself laughing.
I mean, it was really hard not to like sit there and like make it like obvious, but just wait for Bubs to realize what was going on.
Love him.
He likes Fidel, and he gets on with, but it's like my mummy, like, you know.
And that's only natural though, isn't it? Because they're used to having you just to them.
Yeah, and it's just that whole like, you know, they see us having like more affection and stuff, so it's like, oh, it's becoming more of it's a normal thing now. It's not like, oh, they're different.
Mum.
Like my daughter's still a bit like, oh.
Well, yeah, she's a bit older. It must be a bit weird for her.
Yeah, well, she's just sort of like, that's cringe, guys. You know, we're not doing anything, by the way.
It's all PG.
Yeah, exactly. Like the start like of her life with me and her dad, like, but she gets all like a bit like, oh, I don't want to see that, like even on the TV when it happens, you know. And she's just like,
just embarrassed.
Bless her.
Bless her little heart.
It's quite cute, but yeah, it's funny, they're just very different like that. Connor's more used to it, I suppose, than what she is. So
yeah, that's his norm, isn't it? You know, that's what he's seen. But have they ever sort of said that they wished that you and Daddy were back together, or has that ever been a question?
It hasn't as such. So I think it was like a week or two ago, my daughter came out and mentioned something about when that happened, when we separated. I can't remember now off the top of my head exactly what it was that she said, but she expressed that there was some sadness there, basically. And so we sort of had a little chat, you know, about that. And I think she just remembers feeling sad when that conversation happened. And so, yeah, it came out of it. But that, I mean, a couple of years, you know, a few years down the line, it comes back like a little, like she just sort of went back there. I can't even remember why. It just sort of came out, and I was like, oh, we'll talk about this bit. You know, we sort of had a little chat. But yeah, what I got from that was that when she looks back at and remembers that chat, there was that sadness. She remembers feeling sad about it. Whereas obviously my son wouldn't even remember it. Like, and it's just become part of the norm to him. Like, I mean, I doubt, because he's so young, whether he even remembers properly like us all being together.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because my son was 18 months when I left. And there were many years where he would say, you know, I wish you and Daddy would be together. I wish you and Daddy would, you know, even though Daddy had, you know, a regular turnover of girlfriends, or, you know, like a stable girlfriend that the boy just didn't like, or she didn't like him, or, you know, there's always those kind of things. But yeah, I used to say to him, you know, but you don't remember. We'd either be in separate rooms not talking, or we'd be rowing. Do you want that? You know, what you've got is so much better. And getting used to that, I think, for them can be hard. And especially if, you know, like in your situation, somebody new then comes in, it's that whole period of readjustment again, isn't it?
It is. And I think me and Fidel, we're doing it really slowly.
Yeah.
And I've always said, my kids don't need a step, they don't need a dad, they've got it already. And I don't want him to take that pressure on, to feel like he has to be a stepdad to my kids.
Definitely.
But that doesn't mean to say I don't want him to accept them as part of the equation and want to occasionally, like, maybe invite us down or like do things with us, you know.
Because you are a package.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's one of those things. It is obviously important, but it's not a case of I expect him to have like a fathering role for it to be all the time that we all have to be together or anything. Like, that's not, you know, what I look at when I think about, you know, our relationship and how I'd like it to be. It's just more a case of like, when he's here for us to do things together, like he wants to do things. And perhaps, you know, on the odd weekend when we both have that, because he has his youngest on the same weekends that I have mine, you know, it'd be nice occasionally perhaps to just like all do something together. So yeah, it's just more about that, because like I say, it's a difficult one to manage, because I don't want my ex feeling like he's stepping on his toes. I don't want Fidel to think he has to take that role on, because he doesn't.
Yeah, of course.
So it's just sort of like managing all of that. And I mean, it's fun. It's fun. It is. I mean, me and Fidel have had to have some great conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I didn't know if I triggered something the other day, but I didn't want to ask.
I mean, we often have to revisit stuff, you know, and make sure it's still not a problem, or there's still, you know, if something's changed, you know. So we do have a high level of communication. Sometimes I just don't necessarily enjoy it. Like,
well, they're difficult conversations to have, aren't they? Because, you know, at the crux of the whole thing is how much love you have for each other. But logistically, just on a basic level, you guys don't even live in the same area. So then to have your kids come in, and then to have the different ages with your respective kids, that just on the very surface level, there's a lot to consider.
There is.
Right, you can have a cry, we've got time.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun and games, but it's nice. We work through it and we tell each other what we need. It's all good, but it's fun. I mean, obviously I remember the first time Fidel said about meeting his youngest, and I was just like, teenage girl. I remember what it's like to be one of those.
Yeah.
What if she doesn't like me? What do you mean know me? What do you mean what if she doesn't like you now? Who doesn't like you? Everyone loves you. Stop it.
Yeah.
It was because they're that much more grown up.
Yeah.
There's different complexities to it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, there is the risk of like jealousy and stuff. Like, especially when they're that age, like a woman coming in and taking their dad away from them.
Yeah.
Like, hell no, you know. And it's also teenage attitude.
Yeah.
Like,
it's hormones, man. Yeah.
It's just like, what is this how is this gonna go?
Yeah.
I mean, it went really well. So there was no problem. But it was just a bit daunting at first. Kids love me. Like, so it's fine. And I'd also done some mentoring with teenage girls. But I was still there, like, oh, this is weird. Like,
it's difficult. I remember the first time I met my ex-husband's kids. They were 7, 9 and 11, and I was coming up 21, so I was young anyway. But same thing, 11-year-old, and she's got all the attitude, and spent the whole day talking about his ex-girlfriend, or his last 2 ex-girlfriends. The whole day. And you know, and you're kind of going, at some point this is going to wear really thin, but I'm not quite sure how to deal with this right now. And it was poke, but constant. And I was sort of looking at him going, are you going to wrap this up, or you know, but what can you do? like you can't react to that, you know, because
No,
oh, I'm sure she was lovely, and oh, what a shame they're not together anymore, you know, and
just proper
don't worry
like
about
testing
me.
you.
Yeah,
It's funny
it's
because
hard.
I remember my ex-husband's so his nephew has Asperger's, and the first time I met him, we were at his my ex's dad's, and his sister was there with the kids and that. And he just came out of nowhere and went, "Well, you're not Andrea, are you?" Andrea being his
Nope.
no, definitely not Andrea.
Love it.
But it
Out of
was
the
just
mouth
so
of
like
babes.
blunt and like just that you could like you looked around and you could see the awkwardness on the adults. Like, let's just brush past this. Like, little like punch. Like,
Outside.
yeah. But yeah, it was one of those. I was like, you little shitbag.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Needed that. Yeah, as if it's not
Yeah.
awkward enough meeting everyone for the first time. But also, I guess he did you a favour in the same way that she did, because you know about the elephant in the room. You can see it. It's right there in front of you, and you're all dancing around it. So as soon as somebody says it, and it would be a kid rather than an adult, you know, just get it out. Yes, that's not me.
Yeah.
Let's move on, you know.
I mean, I look back and I do laugh. Like, honestly, it was one of those moments that it was just like, no, I'm not.
No, right. You never know if it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, I know, right? And obviously, but he's on the spectrum, so he's got his stuff going on. Like, so
Totally.
it's never something I held against him that
No,
much.
no.
No, I'm joking.
You obviously had a bit of a change in that routine. He wasn't quite happy with it.
Yeah. But that's like I have him on my social media. I still, I've watched him grow up,
Yeah,
it's nice. But obviously part of the separation, and like I've had to obviously let go to some of those family members that I had
yeah,
before.
and that's really hard actually. My stepchildren are not my stepchildren anymore. You know, they're adults. And the eldest one, she's married with a baby, and my son's an uncle at 12, which is nuts. He loves him. The middle one is a hairdresser, and the younger one, who is my son's like spitting image of, he's a Marine, and they're incredible adults, but they don't really speak to me that much anymore, which I find really hard. Like my son will come home like this weekend just gone. He's like, oh, I saw my brother and my sisters and we hung out and da 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 da. And then he had his first realization ever that they're not full brother and sisters. It's taken him this long. And they've got a sister from their mum's relationship who obviously they always think is their sister.
Yeah.
She hangs out with them, he knows her. Like, so we talk about extended families because I think there are so many different layers to it all and different offshoots. But yeah, he said to me, he was like, so hang on a minute, if my brother and my sisters have like my dad and their mum, that means they're not my brother and my sisters. And I was like, no, they are. He was like, but they're not yours. And I was like, well, no, obviously, but they're like, half, if you like, but you still got the same dad. And his face was just like I'd hit him over the head with something. Like, it was like, what? We're not proper brother and sister.
Do you know, I've got like my like, because I was brought up in this situation. We never realized until I was a bit older. My older brother has a different dad to me, but my mum was pregnant when she met my dad, and so my dad's always been there from the start, like, and brought him up as his own sort of thing. So we, like, when I say we, me, it's more me and my sister. My brother unfortunately had some arguments when he was young, so he sort of knew before he got told. We never had it explained to us. It just sort of like came out, and it was like a thing all of a sudden. That was really hard, like, because it's that identity stuff when you're young, growing up, and your siblings and and so all of a sudden, like, my brother was meeting his real dad, and I was watching it, like, I don't fucking like, like, no,
Protective.
Your dad is my dad, like, no.
Not having it.
Yeah, not having it. Not on. But there was a lot of that, and then like my mum with one of her partners, he had a daughter already. She was a lot younger, but she came swooping in, and she used to like just follow me around like a little sheep, bless her, when I was there. And even after they split, I still had a relationship with her. But they also went on to have a son, my younger brother. also lived with me for a bit, and I've just always had that extended family, and it can work. But there are different like angles to it. And then my dad had a daughter as well before my younger brother came along, so I already had step or halves, you know, and stuff like around. So it's something, that's always sort of been there, and the dynamic of that is quite difficult. Like, because I remember you can have jealousy for one of your siblings because they've got one of your parents that you didn't have, sort of thing, and all that stuff that comes out to play. It's a difficult one to see past, and I know it's something I've had to overcome and sort of help my sister through at times when certain things have been there towards our other sister who was brought up by my dad, and we all get on now. I get on with every single one of them. So, you know, all of the relationships are good, but there's been times where you can see these things coming out a little bit. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, I think I have that in my mind when it comes to like the whole blending mine and Fidel's family and stuff, you know, the dynamic, especially like of the jealousy stuff, you know.
And it happens easily. And I think, I don't know about you, but I guess you call all of your brother and sisters just brother and sisters. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're step or half, or they're just your family.
I don't actually refer to any of them as halves or anything like that. They're all just my siblings. I acknowledge that me, my brother and my sister, my older brother and my younger sister, who's got the same dad as me and mum, we are a lot closer because we were brought up around the same age. There's less age gap, and we were all together. So we do have a closer relationship than our other siblings. But I'm still quite close to all of them, you know, despite that. But we do have like our own WhatsApp group, you know, sibling group and stuff.
Love that.
Which actually, to be honest, my brother doesn't really contribute too much, so that's why we've got his wife to be in there. Because she's a lot better at responding. So
Man thing.
He loves it. He's like, can you not just shut up?
You're a real asset in terms of knowing how to, or finding ways to blend the extended family. You know, for me, there's just me and my sister, and like my parents have been together for 47 something years. We're an anomaly these days. You know, like I remember being at primary school, and back in the 80s, you'd hear people like having divorced parents that would be like, oh, they're divorced. And now people are like, your parents are still together. What? Well, they've never had affairs. They've never been with it, you know.
Well, maybe, but
not that we know. We're in this really weird space where there is just me and my sister and my parents. So I'm not used to, I mean, obviously was trying to get used to that for the last 18 years or whatever, this extension. But your upbringing means that this is normal for you. This is your normal. So to kind of incorporate the new section of that, I guess you know all the pitfalls. You're more aware of stuff like that.
Definitely. And it's one of those that I still have to remind myself, my experience of it is going to be new to me still. So I have to not hold myself like with the expectations, you know, and just go, it's okay to feel this way. It's a new experience like for you. So although I have experience of being the child in it and stuff, like being the parent in it is a bit different. So I do have to sort of like give myself that like pat on the back and that like compassion and stuff, you know. It's an interesting one. And I think also what triggered some of my stuff was when I found out, I mentioned it to you I think the other week, I mentioned my ex-husband being in a relationship with a girl I know, with a friend, and not necessarily finding out the way I should have sort of done. It came from my 8-year-old. My daughter, she's a clever little thing, and she managed to work it out that Daddy has a secret girlfriend.
And they're not stupid, you know. I think you know, men think that they can hide stuff from mums, but kids tell us things that they never even have on their radar.
And that's the thing, like, so when it first came out, I had stuff planned, and you know, I was going to Brighton Pier with the kids and stuff because I'd just come back from Bristol from being with Fidel for his birthday and that, and then came back, picked the kids up from my mum's, and it came out. And then I was like, I'm not going to deal with this right now because I'm taking the kids to Brighton and stuff. And then I had the Commonwealth netball games the next day while I was out, so it was like I didn't really have time to process it properly. I just sort of put it in a little box and was like, I'll come back to you in a minute. Then on the Sunday I was like, no. I am not happy about this, and I really want to give you a punch in the face.
Right? It gets you like that, doesn't it? The anger, like, how dare you
There was
not
like
tell
layers
me?
to it. There was a lot of different layers going on. There
Yeah.
was one, it was a mutual friend, a girl that I went to school with, that I'd gone out with my brother, like I was friends with, like
Too
knew
close.
very well.
Mm.
And we'd had a previous chat not long after separation about not getting with mutual friends, so that was a bit of a kick in the teeth. And then there was the fact that I'd found out from our 8-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
Not cool. Um, so there was that stuff going on, and so I had some self-righteous ego stuff at play.
Understandably.
My garden got a good see into that day. The hedge trimmer came out and it all got butchered. And I even I said this to my ex. So I got him round on the Monday and we had the chat, and I told him that I knew, and he was like, "Oh, I was going to tell you today."
Of course you were.
Yeah, okay. But, I had a joke with him. I said to him, the garden got a good C and G because of this. Because yesterday I wanted to sack you.
Grateful for that. Take the good.
So that's like I knew I had to release that stuff that was going on before having that chat with him. So we had the chat, and he completely apologized and took responsibility for the fact that I found out through our daughter, and that he should have told me sooner, so that didn't happen. He literally went, hands up, I'll take that, like that was on me.
Yeah.
So that was nice. I mean, there was some other bits that came out from our daughter that made it look like they'd been meeting up as with her, and she's got kids as well.
Right.
And him with the kids on his weekends and stuff, because there's a pub, like we used to live in this pub when back in the day when I was at uni and stuff, and so it was the local pub, so she goes to this pub too, because obviously people hang out there. It was a case of like, yeah, Daddy takes him to the pub, and like we see her quite a bit, or whatever. Like there was some comments here that had painted a picture, and I was like, that's not cool. Like we always said we would have the chat before introducing the kids, to a new partner and stuff like that. He was like, that's not happened. Like, honestly, I can hands down say they've just been coincidences. I've been in the pub with a kid, and she's come in or whatever, And I was like, okay, well, obviously, like from my point of view, like hearing what Taylor was like, it didn't quite come out like that. And he was like, no, I get it. Fair play to him. He took full responsibility. He was like, it wasn't my intention for this to happen, and blah, blah, blah. So it was fine. We ironed it out, and it was all good. And at the end of the day, I'm not actually bothered by the fact that it's a mutual friend, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think that was just more of me being like a bit self-righteous, But, at the end of the day, she's a nice girl. And I want him to be happy. He deserves to be happy, and he deserves to be loved. So I feel like they probably are quite well matched. I know she's a nice girl, so it's all good. In terms of the future, if they get to that point where he wants to have the kids involved, I'd be quite happy with that. Like, because I know her, and I know, I'm comfortable with my kids being around her.
That's the silver lining, isn't it? When I've had so many instances, same sort of thing, where the boys come back on, we stayed at so-and-so's, or we went out for dinner with so-and-so, and you go, wicked, who is this person, and how do I know their background? And and I don't, is the answer to that. And there's nothing you can do about it, because it's not your life, and we are not as fortunate as you. We've never had those conversations where you have the respect of this is so and so before I met, so and that's unfortunate, but at least in this situation, this woman, her background. It's not nice the way it has been done, but like I can see from your point of view, it's not just about respect for you as a person, but it's about putting your kids first and breaking it to them gently, and making sure they're settled, because it's confusing for kids.
And that's the thing. I think I really did have to sort of like sit with it as to what was actually creating certain reactions within me.
Yeah,
it was easy for me to dress it up and be like, well, it's because it came from my kids and I'm thinking about my kids. There was
that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's not about me, it's about the kids.
Cool. And sometimes, what, it is about us. Like, let's just be fair, sometimes we just need that. But I think as relationships progress further,
it was the respect thing, and that's important for the co-parenting relationship. So it was about me too feeling disrespected, and so and I completely put my hands up to that. I was willing to.
But also, But for me, that respect is definitely, it has to be mutual, you know, and I think it shows the children, like you say, the relationship that you have, if you're going to co-parent successfully, there has to be that respect, and not just for the kids, but to show them that this is how you treat a mummy, this is how you treat someone that you've broken up with but you've had a history with. That's where the respect comes in. It's not about necessarily the information, it's just about how it's presented.
Yeah, exactly. And because obviously, if we don't respect each other, that massively impacts our relationship, which then, you know, impact our kids.
And they see that they're in the middle of that. That's the main issue, isn't it?
It is. So yeah, all those things are really important. And that conversation happened, and you know, it was all good in the end. It was it was a funny one.
I bet. He's like, all right, Leanne, garden looks nice.
You know what? I think what I actually done was to get him round on the Sunday. I messaged him when I was angry, being like, "Can you come round and sort out that stone fireplace that you've had in the garden for like God knows how many years? Once I went done with it, can you please come round and do it?" That's how I got him round. I was like, "I'm gonna get him to do this and this and this and this." It didn't quite happen like that, but I was angry at the time.
But this is the thing, right? Whenever and this is what I love talking about you for, because whenever I see like coaches, especially on Insta and Facebook and does that, everybody's all, "I'm so healed, and and now everything's so wonderful and everything's so good." And you go, do you know what? Bullshit. I call bullshit on the lot, because we're still human. We have to process these things. Different things rock up in our own relationships, for our own stuff, from our kids, from our exes. There's not a single person that has the immediate reaction of peace and harmony, all love, I know how to deal with it. Your ego, your nervous system, all the internal stuff that we carry just triggers, and you have this little like argument inside. It's like, I just need to get out and have a bit of a shout about it. And like you say, you have to go, all right, have a minute, have a talk with myself, you know, and then process stuff. It's not just natural.
No, I always feel like it's important to clarify trigger, because me, when I say triggered, trigger, whatever, you know, what I'm basically saying is it has created some sort of emotional reaction within you. Definitely. You know, and so you get good triggers, you get bad triggers. Do you know what I mean? Trigger, it's not just a negative, you know, thing, but obviously there is that commotion that's attached to it that is negative. When it triggers a certain emotional response, I know to press pause before reacting.
Definitely.
You know, so then I can respond to a situation.
Yeah, I was going to say, I always talk to my clients about reaction and responding. You know, the minute you react, you're just going out there. You've not taken time to process that. You have to stop and work out how you're going to respond, what made you, what happened, why, you know, process all of those things. And then you can have a proper discussion. If you're triggered and you discuss something in the reaction, that's not a discussion, that's a row, and that's going to get out of hand because you're dysregulated.
Exactly that. And so yeah, that's always something that's at the back of my mind whenever anything like that happens. We're all human, so it doesn't matter how much healing or how much work on yourself you've done, you're still going to get triggered in some way. It's that higher consciousness, isn't it? Sort of like, I'm above everything. It's like, no,
you're not.
No.
You're not. I don't care who you are. You're not.
Exactly. Nobody's perfect. Like, you know, we're all human. So we all have these like reactions and responses and stuff like that, and that is okay. Gonna try and make out like you don't, then you're basically saying you're superhuman, aren't you really?
No one's superhuman.
Actually, I'm a manifesting generator, and apparently we are hybrids.
Shut the front door.
Said it and I'm owning it.
I love that. I think I'm a generator too.
Because you get different types. You've got like the generators and you've got the manifestors, and then like the other ones. The
generators make stuff happen.
I am a manifesting generator. Love it. I am like the new hybrid.
Love it. Love it. But that's how you know, because you know you can make stuff happen, but you're still human. We still know that we have to wait for things. We have to detach from things. Things don't just fall into your lap. That's not life. No. So you can work and work to manifest these things, but at some point they'll appear. Just, it's not immediate.
And if you're not getting any reaction whatsoever, I mean, so there's certain teachings, you know, which I completely agree with, in terms of not viewing your emotions as being like you sort of thing, and actually just observing them. But there's a difference between doing that, because you're still actually feeling them, to actually suppressing them and ignoring them,
Yeah.
and like not acknowledge, like, do you know what I mean? There's a healthy and unhealthy when it comes to that stuff. And I think, yeah, in the industry, there is a lot of sort of unhealthiness in the teachings,
Yeah, it's funny actually. I posted this morning about crying, because as growing up we were always told, stiff upper lip and you'll be fine, stop crying, what are you crying for, I'll give you something to cry about, all that kind of stuff. And there was a long period of my life where I never cried, and I remember saying to someone, I don't cry, like it was a strength. Then there was a period where I cried at everything, like the kettle wasn't boiling fast enough, or and maybe this was around the time where I left my ex-husband. Maybe I did have a breakdown, maybe I just saw the light, maybe it was one of those where I just woke up, I was sort of shaken awake. And I used to cry all the time over nothing, because my emotions were so, not even just at the surface, but they were just so dysregulated. I just was overflowing with emotion.
That's like a bottle up as well, isn't it? It can be seen as that, like, and you were
Yeah.
just sort of now spilling over the top.
Yeah, and there's no way to contain it, and that's when it gets dangerous, because I'd get angry and I'd cry, I'd get frustrated and I'd cry, I'd be sad, I'd cry, I'd be like, there was just no rhyme or reason to it. But it's only since sitting with it, asking the whys, processing, where does this come from, that, for example, I'm not saying this is like a win, but I'd go to my daughter's grave and I would just be in bits for hours. You'd have to drag me away, to the point where I wouldn't go, because I didn't want to lose my shit there. However, I now know I don't need to be there to process that. I don't need to be there to let that go. If I feel it, just have a good cry, and it all of a sudden you start to kind of allow yourself to feel things, so you're more prepared when they turn up at the door with the next disaster of a relationship, or they turn up at the door that the kid's done this and they haven't handled it perfectly, or whatever. You're not so defensive, because you're not afraid of what's going to come out.
Well, that's part of it, isn't it? Because we try so hard to like fight against how we feel, because we're fearful that if we actually allow ourselves to feel this way, or to allow ourselves to cry, it's that whole like never ending, when's it going to stop, like it's just going to like open the floodgates, or we're going to then be in this state of like depression, dwelling, and so we just sort of fight against it, because ultimately we don't want to feel that way. But it's normal to feel that way. We're not going to be on cloud 9 jumping across rainbows all the time. That's just not life.
It would be weird if it was like, then you would think that you were definitely having some kind of breakdown.
I mean, yeah, exactly, or in a video game. This is not reality. It's not reality though, but it is something, it's inevitable. Those emotions, like no emotion is abnormal.
Definitely.
They're all there for a reason. They all have a purpose, and we can learn something from them if we actually accept them and just allow ourselves to feel them, and ask the question of, okay, what's going on here? What am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? And sometimes we don't even have to do that. We just got to allow ourselves to just feel it and observe it and let it go, come in and go out, because otherwise it gets trapped in our bodies, and that's when our nervous system and stuff like that starts being impacted, so, because it's trapped, doesn't know what to do, we're keeping it there.
And I said in my post, I was a nervous wreck, and then I kind of went, oh my god, that is where that saying comes from. And you're so dysregulated within your nervous system that people go, oh, kids so anxious these days. It's because they don't know how to process their feelings, and it's too important to sit down with your kids, especially in the journey of extended families, separating parenting, all that kind of stuff, and be like, look, if you're cross, tell me. If you've got a question, ask. If you're frustrated, let me know. If you feel sad, like your daughter did, let's talk about it, because then these things become normalized. These things become easier for them to cope with as an adult, and then they're not these balls of tension running around the house, crying and screaming at you.
I mean, it's a funny one. Like, I mean, thinking about it the other day with the kids. So I'm very much like, it's okay to be angry, you know, it's okay to feel sad, you know, let's talk about it when you're feeling this way. There's other times my daughter's obviously frustrated or angry because I've told her she needs to do something like get ready for school now,
Mhm.
and you know, we're
Yeah.
just been like prancing around or whatever. And then there's like stamping up the footsteps, and I'm like, excuse me, no. Like, and then it's like almost like, but you said it's okay to feel this way. And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't mean stamping stairs.
Not in the way I meant it.
Yeah, exactly. No slamming that door.
Oh my God, you're so right. He was banging on the walls yesterday, and I was like, stop doing that. Why are you doing that? Back it in.
And the
Okay, all
mum's
right,
like,
I'll have a
it's
word with
okay to
myself.
be angry. It's okay to do.
Could we do it in a, banging drums kind of way?
Although I'm sure that would soon get tiring unless you had a soundproof room.
Oh, mate, he has a drum. That's like one of his main things. That's the story for another day. Yeah, that's necessary, I think, to get some of the anger out. Honestly, they're nuts.
Well, I used to have my teenage brother living with me, and he had ADHD and some ADD, and just he was brought up in a toxic environment with domestic abuse and alcohol and like misuse and stuff. So, and I was always like his second mum. I always took him out of that equation. I had him a lot, to the point where when I was doing my degree, I sort of came to a bit of a crossroad where I was like, I needed to I felt like I had to save him from that environment. And so I nearly quit my degree to bring him up and go for custody of him.
Wow.
My ex-husband just sort of like convinced me, like talked me around, like to actually continue in the degree because that's for me and my future, you know, and because he saw the path, like he saw what was, he'd been around for long enough to know the dynamics there and stuff. So he was like, you need to put yourself first, you know, and this, because I'd done it for my sister as well.
Right.
So it was just something there, like as the older sister, I took my sister in, I sorted her out a place, you know, and stuff like that. So I got her out of the equation because when I left, she unfortunately got the brunt of some stuff.
Right.
And so then I always said, like, if anything happens, you let me know and I'll get you out of there straight away.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what happened. And I sort of helped her through certain decisions, you know, going forward.
It's the mum guilt, it's the nurturer's guilt.
Yeah.
It's, you want to save him, you want to be able to help him, but at the same time, you have to put your family first, and that has always been the right decision for you. That's always been something that at the time we struggle with, but down the line, it makes sense.
Yeah, 100%.
I think that's the chalice, I guess, that we're handed as a parent.
Yeah.
Whether we're a step parent or we take on a nurturing role, as parent to a sibling, or we are a parent, or, we're never going to get it right. We're never going to be able to give someone the opportunities that they take for themselves to make themselves better. We're just there to guide, and that's the worst part, that you can't kind of push someone to, because it's going to be beneficial for them. But the nature of parenting is, create, develop, grow, release, and just what happens. Like, they fly the nest, and then you're sort of like, right,
what do I do now?
I know.
I've had obviously like some of my female clients who do the feminine embodiment course program. They're that bit older where their kids are teenagers, have moved out or whatever, and so I always, whether they feel like they need to or not, I'm always like, we start with identity stuff. Because so many people think, oh no, I've removed like this like label that somebody placed me in this and that, whatever, I don't care anymore, I've removed. And I'm like, okay, so how do you identify? And they're like, well, I'm a mum, I'm there. I'm like, okay, so this is all the identity stuff that we're going to be working on.
Yeah, definitely.
But like, people just think it's those like the negative stuff, but it's important to actually know we have these labels and we're attached to them, and that affects us and the way we behave and how we view ourselves. So then what we allow ourselves to do, it's all linked. And it is such a thing where when we've been a mum for so long, and that's been our main role, stay-at-home mum, wife, whatever, and then our kids move out and they go, who the fuck are we now?
Yeah.
Well, who needs me now?
Yeah.
Am I needed? There's just, there is so much to that. that there's that empty feeling of, okay, well, what do I do now? What's my purpose now? So being aware, and even with some of my clients who haven't got to that point yet, I still work on this and like with them so that they know, because it's important. We need to sort of remove some of that so that we're still, ourselves, and that we don't lose ourselves fully in those roles, so that when we get to that point, we're so lost and we haven't got what to do. Like,
yeah, definitely. And that's why it's so important to know who you are, I think, before you have kids. And we don't, because I think kids change who we are and help us to grow. But I think, like, for me, I would have waited until I was older, hindsight being that wonderful 50-50 that we always have, to know who you are and to be your own individual person, as well as a parent, as well as part of a couple, as well as all of the things that we do, so that, like you say, your individual identity remains even when any of those things are no longer there.
And it's important because it's also a bit unhealthy. You're putting a lot of pressure actually on your kids, just not having anything else going on and just identifying yourself as like, you're actually putting quite a lot of pressure on them because you're sort of wanting from them too. Do you know what I mean?
You're not fulfilling yourself individually. You're waiting for someone else to fill you up, as it were.
Yeah. So I think it is, massively important, which, I mean, I noticed certain things and I was like, I got back into playing netball. And I remember it was like one night a week. I would go and play a game, sometimes two, but in the same night, and I remember feeling bad because my husband had to put the kids to bed.
Yeah, babysitting.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
So, and I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I remember my sister, who doesn't have kids, but like my sister was like, what? No, Leanne, you can put the kids to bed. He's absolutely fine. He's more than capable of doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I know he is. But it would be like worrying, like, if he felt angry for having to do it or whatever, like, and it's crazy, that mum guilt stuff,
I love the fact that you have, this relationship, which is, again, for you, but includes them as and when. And I think that you're smashing it all out of the park.
I mean, it definitely feels like that at times. Yeah. And then there's other times that I'm just like, I mean, because there's a lot to mine and Fidel's relationship, because obviously we've got the distance. That we're like 2 and a bit hours away from each other. His kids are teenagers, adults, and mine are young. The societal stuff.
Yeah.
Conditioning, programming at play, where it's just like, after this amount of time you move in together and then you have kids, then you get married and then you have kids, or whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, we've done that. You're still sort of, every now and again I have to sort of sit and think, is this like conditioning that's making me feel that I want this, or is it actually something that I want? Yeah. And so that's something I've had to revisit, like with the blended family and that, because it's complex with us. Like I say, like, it does make those things like more complicated. And of course, I'd be lying if I said there hasn't been times where I'm just like, oh, it'd just be nice to actually live together, and see each other more, like, and have that. But then there's other times that I'm like, oh, thank God I've got my own space.
Yeah, starfish in that bed.
Yeah.
I love talking to you. Like, I could talk to you for days. Like, there's so much more.
Fun. I'll have to come on again and we could do a different angle.
Thank you so much. And I would love for you to come back onto the podcast. And yeah, definitely people need to check you out on Facebook and check out your courses, because I think they're super important for our well-being and for our femininity.
Yeah, my business is Revive Coaching. I've got a page on Facebook. You can follow me there. I'm also I post mostly from my personal page, so Leanne Ewart-Davies, and you can find me on Instagram or Facebook, but I am predominantly more on Facebook than I am anywhere else, so that's probably the best place to come and hang out with me.
And it's a great place to be, let me tell you.
It is.
Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
You're more than welcome. Please come back.
I will. I definitely will.